let's let it fill up. See a lot of familiar names and some names of folks that for sure have not been in this group that much. Welcome also. And we really are surrounded here by a really an extraordinary group of people. I have gotten to know in the last years, and I'm extremely, extremely humbled by being in the presence of all here. I am going to start us off, ladies and gentlemen, with a little bit of a share screen. So here we are in Tag 23. This is the 6th traditional architecture gathering and the 3rd one that is online. Hopefully next year it will be a hybrid of some sort where we have as many people live as we have them here online. I think that we have come to realize recently that 40% of all energy and 40% of all the emissions go to and come from buildings. That's quite a number. And that's one of the, probably the primary reason that we are here. I want to introduce myself. My name is Buras. I'm 40 years architect and urbanist. I'm a PhD in modern design and history and theory, a designer of Grand Central Madison that recently opened part of the team on DFW Terminal D, and I've worked on the Capitol Complex, founder of the Washington, D.C. chapter of the ICA, and published a 500-page book through Harvard, The Art of Classic Planning, which basically is what has worked. The rest of the stuff in urban design and planning, it just doesn't. So it's sort of a list of the stuff that has worked. And I'm also founder of the Classic Planning Institute. The values that are unique to TAG and also to the Institute, as we're as much about learning from everybody around as we are about doing research in particular areas, is that architecture is central to urbanism, that the business of all urbanism and all built environment stuff has simply got to be genuinely holistic. The idea of town and country really has not been addressed much since Ebenezer Howard, and whatever he put down there was really misconstrued hugely. And what is coming up recently is that crafts may be essential for individual, societal, and planetary well-being. Because we're a holistic organization, we have 5 parts that have to interact, that do interact, much like the human body, if you will. And we have a library and a laboratory. We have an academy and a studio and a STOA. The structure can be sort of formulated as a building, and we're here in the STOA. This is where Tag 23 is occurring. And I will remind you that we witnessed today, as a matter of course, really strange ugliness that makes absolutely no sense. And also, let me remind you that we're already very deep in the future. As a matter of fact, we're up to our necks in it. And this so-called future is something that was actually anticipated since the 70s, when people started being more academically interested in where all this is going. So there's a whole list of what we're going to be up against, and the upcoming generations are already in it, suffering it, and they are going to see even more of it. We already have climate change, pandemics, challenges to democracy and war. And the worst thing in all this is that we're simply continuing the mistakes of the 21st century, forgetting the human. I don't see Ms. Hogg. Is Ms. Hogg around? Yes, there you are. Hello. Forgetting the human. Do you want to tell us what the errors of the 21st century are, please?
No, you continue, please.
Okay. The blind belief in technology that has created, the whole idea that a place, a habitation place for people might be a machine is seriously erroneous. Selling strangeness as progress. This is absolutely offensive. When people are dying and their houses are being blown up in Ukraine, to actually suggest something like this as a modern piece of art, I think is insensitive, to say the least. And then, of course, there's the whole business of annihilating beauty, which we have seen consistently throughout all the media, whether it is in the reduced spectrum of color, the reduced spectrum of sound, or the I'm wondering about taste now, whether we're eating in a more reduced version of the flavors we had in the past. But we do know in our field that if we understand people, buildings, and cities, that we can ask for what we deserve as humans. So I want to welcome you to Tag 23. We're going to spend 3 days in what is likely, in terms of its content and in terms of its relevance, the most advanced and relevant architectural conference of this year. Let's do some housekeeping first. Ms. Hogg, do you want to take the lead on that? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So ground rules, number one, the traditional architecture gathering environment is one of open-mindedness and quality of discourse. Participants are encouraged to debate each other's ideas from positions of neutral respect and good manners. By joining a session or online thread, you agree to avoid ad hominem statements regarding individuals present or absent, and sectarian religious, partisan political, or aesthetic ideologies for their own sake. In case of disagreement, we believe that all statements made in our community must be first heard, and then the parties submit to mediation until cordiality is resumed, or to the point of, I can live with this. Session leaders and/or moderators will perform the duty of umpire of their own sessions. Infractions will lead to a warning, followed by ejection from a session upon a second occurrence. Judgment calls may not be questioned in real time. Session infractions will be addressed within 48 hours of the event closing by quorum of 3 event organizers as elected by the organizing committee. This is just a audience media release for everyone. You authorize Tag 23 coordinators in the Classic Planning Institute to use images, recordings, videos, and quotes that you, according to standard crediting, copyright, and publication procedures, may submit during the Tag 23 event for promotional, diffusion, publication, educational, and/or other public media purposes. You understand that you will not be compensated by Tag 23 for any use of these materials, and that you may be identifiable from such electronic or photographic reproduction. You're attending the event releases Tag 23 coordinators and the Classic Planning Institute from any liability arising out of their using any part of your participation and/or presentation.
Thank you. Continuing education, we're very proud to announce, and we have had a huge amount of work invested by Roger Jackson and particularly Aaron Holt of FFKR in setting this up. So we have applied for 14 different sessions for a total of 16 and a half hours, HSW AIA LUs, which means that they are of a particularly potent nature. 10 of them have been approved, 4 are pending, and there's going to be, at the end of every session, there's going to be a little questionnaire. Put down your name, your AIA number, and 4 points that you learned in the session, and you will get your continuing education units. All this is free, courtesy of our sponsors, which we will thank in a moment. But first, I want to thank our STOA Tag 23 volunteers, Ms. Hogg, who's on the board, Mr. Aaron Holt from FFKR, Cecilia Kent from Street Level Sydney, and Imo Voresh from Oldenburg, Germany. Sorry for the graphics. And it looks like we're going to have another one screwed up over here. This is the supporting staff, CPI, that have been supporting Tag 23. Ms. Tasnim Zraikat, Ms. Zareen Rafadia, and Ms. Angela Kapp, our social media coordinator. Oh, this is really great. The organizing committee, composed of Roger Jackson. You want to wave at the people, maybe? He's waving. Myself, Philip Esocoff, and Pablo Alvarez Funes. So thank you very, very much for being here. I am really I don't know what happened to these things. I want to thank profoundly Alan Macy from Arbon Precast Stone for his very, very generous support, and the generous support also of Marshall Walters from AP Formliner, Architectural Polymers, and Vetter Stone and Alabama Stone. Philip Nelson, thank you very much. And they sent this picture just to prove they can build anything out of stone, including a doghouse with Snoopy on it. I also want to thank very much the community support we've had from donations. This list was updated yesterday, so you may not see your name here if you actually donated. Apologies for that. But for platinum, thank you very much to Jonathan Smith. For the gold level, Elizabeth Platter-Zyberg, Bruce Donnelly, Christopher Andrews. For the silver level, Chris Fagan, Sean Perry, Christopher Weeks, James Doherty, Abraham Calhoun, Isabella Tiana Diaz. And for the bronze, Batul Al-Musawi and Milena Kirkles-Bingray. Thank you very, very much for your really great generosity. We're here in day one. And as before we get going, I would like to introduce our two co-hosts. One is Ms. Alison Hogg from London, and the other one is Imo Voresh from Oldenburg in Germany. They're going to help out with the hosting here. And also to say thank you to Dustin Cantor from Podtex, who is running the show, which takes a huge weight off of our shoulders. Today, we're going to have 5 sessions. The first one is about architecture that endures. The second one is our keynote by Lucien Style, who is one of the most capable and generous architects and educators out there. We're going to have, after that, dumbbell and troika sessions. Is there a doika? What do you call 2 horses on a, anyways, there's a future of architectural education is going to be discussed by Joseph Jutras and Nadia Everard. The original Green and Roman construction is going to be a joint conversation by Steve Muzan and Matthew Bronsky. And we're going to have a really interesting 3-way conversation about 21st century fabric and urbanism. Phil Esocoff, John Simpson, and Raymond Loic Chan, which it should be very, very interesting. So let's set out for our first session, Architecture That Endures. It was termed the 2073 Architecture Awards. This is a term that showed up in conversation between me and Phil Esocoff. Phil, are you around here somewhere? I don't see him, but I hope he will show up if he hasn't arrived yet. This is going to be divided into 3 parts. We're going to, Phil and I came up with the idea of architecture that needs to last, and how to that today we already know the architecture that's going to last. You know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist for that. And so we decided that we would look for stuff that will last generationally. And it makes so little sense to replace buildings frequently that this really is a turning point, at least in thinking with regard to construction. This prompted the idea of the 2073 Architecture Awards, and we're going to be celebrating those today. The 3 parts of the conversation today are going to be, we're going to start out with a wonderful presentation by Cecilia Kent of Street Level Australia, of their really wonderful Sydney is Beautiful competition that occurred recently. There's going to be the project exhibitor presentations, and we have awards for them. So we're going to give them awards. And after that, there's going to be a conversation, open conversation, that Robert, Adam, myself are going to field. At the end of the process, we are going to celebrate Robert Adam as one of the founders of the New Traditional Movement, because he is not going to be available to do that on Sunday. So without further ado, I'd like to turn you over to Cecilia Kent from Street Level Australia. Street Level was founded by Millie Main. Some of you might know her already. I would assume that many of you have heard of her if you don't know her. An extraordinarily generous, and she's the fairy godmother of the CPI, to cut it short. And I want to thank her personally. She ran an absolutely exemplary competition to really start turning the tide in Sydney. Cecilia, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Buras. Good morning. Good morning. My name is Cecilia Kent, and I am the Sydney Student Chapter Lead for Street Level Australia. Street Level Australia, started by Millie Main, is an association of local groups working to make Australian places more beautiful and conducive to human flourishing by advancing good urbanism, traditional architecture, and quality building. Sydney is Beautiful Architecture and Urbanism competition was established to celebrate beautiful architecture and promote the design and development of buildings that will be cherished by generations to come. The prize is intended to lift the expectation of Australians for new buildings and inspire a new generation of architects to embrace the timeless principles of new traditional architecture and urbanism. The 2002 competition focused on a vacant block in Woolloomooloo in Sydney. The brief was to design an architectural scheme for this site that the community will love and which responds to judging criteria. Open to both Australian and international practices, Sydney is Beautiful received 13 entries from both Australian and international practices. Our judges were Dr. Buras, Mike Day, Richard Economakis, Elizabeth Farrelly, and Millie Main. First prize was awarded to MJ Study Architects, with the main judging criteria being that the project must be beautiful, contextual, contributed to the local neighbourhood, and was sustainably designed to endure. I will now present a short video that will give a glimpse into the awards ceremony held in Glebe Town Hall on the 31st of January this year, focusing on the efforts of this competition.
Cecilia, would you please stop the screen share? And when you reshare your screen share, make sure that the sound toggle is enabled so everyone can hear. Thank you.
I'll try that again. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah, it'll be in the bottom left corner. There'll be a little toggle there for you.
Lovely. Yes, I'm not sure if it's working. Sorry.
Can we find some of it online? Maybe return to it. What else do you have in your presentation right now?
That was the presentation. The video covered the award ceremony. It covered comments from Millie Main, the Planning Minister of New South Wales, Rob Stokes. Yes, if we return, I'm sorry, I did not realize it wouldn't work.
Maybe you can find the video of Stokes online, that maybe we can do it straight through. Let's continue where we were, and if that's fixable, we'll return to you. Just let us know when.
Thank you.
Will that work?
Yes. Actually, I'm going to try it one more time.
Good for you.
My apologies, everyone. Is there an audio?
Negative.
Okay.
Apologies.
So let's go back to where we were before and start taking a look at the architecture that endures, buildings that will look good in 50 years. What we're going to do here is run through a number of architectural projects that were submitted, and the submitters, most of them are going to have short presentations explaining what they were doing. We're going to start with Craig Hamilton Architects. They submitted Freedom Place, which is, do you want to do the honors, Ms. Hogg and Mr. Warish, as we go through these? I'm handing it over to you guys. I'll just flip the slides, and
I
whenever,
think Mr. Folland is actually in here. He can present himself from Craig Hamilton.
yes, and I think what you want to do is directly just start your share, and it should stop this share automatically.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me? It's Craig Hamilton speaking.
Yes, we can.
Good. Since 2016, we have been engaged in a trilogy of projects in Dallas on the old Parkland campus. This is a private campus of commercial offices that has been developed by our wonderful patron as much as a place of culture, as a place of commerce. The three buildings that we'll be showing you today, the one that is immediately in front of you, the 240-foot Campanile bell tower, and then immediately to the right of that, the second building, which is known as Freedom Place. And the third project is just out of your screen on the right-hand side, an entire city block that's being developed and is currently being under construction. The three buildings are colored dark pink, and the West Campus, which was developed prior to our involvement, is on the left bottom of the screen. So at the top, we have Freedom Place. Immediately below that, a 30-foot or 40-foot square tower, bell tower. And on the right-hand side, the new campus called East Campus, which is in construction as we speak. These are early watercolors of the first building, which is a 95,000 square feet construction of Indiana limestone and brick, with very particular detailing taken with considerable care taken in the preparation of that detailing. As you can see, the building is composed of two parts, what we might call a palazzo and a temple. And it's filled with detail which relates to both Texas, Dallas, and the wider classical world. Our patron has very kindly, throughout all three projects, provided an opportunity for the great Alexander Stoddard to produce sculptural programs for all three projects. This is, in my opinion, an act of civic pride and something which is really unusual in the 21st century. So here we have Alexander Stoddard's great 20-foot high bronze figure of the Spirit of Duty standing in the courtyard of the building. The interiors, the communal areas, are fitted out with interiors that will endure, much inspired by the great university clubs and city clubs that one finds in both the UK and in America. A huge amount of attention paid to detailing with subtle inventions relating to symbols that are pertinent to the site and to the location, and great craftsmanship throughout, which is unusual in commercial developments these days. The detailing, as you can see, involving animals that relate to Texas, incorporated into the detailing. And the entrance door case, which features a corn and cob frieze, which is developed out of homage to the great American sculptor Lee Lowry, who worked for Bertram Grosvenor Goodhue. So there are cultural references throughout that relate to our great heroes of the past. And further detail of the zinc spandrels between the windows. Alexander Stoddard's frieze to Cincinnatus, which is under the portico or loggia of the entrance to this particular building. And a slide in Alexander Stoddard's workshop of the great scale of his Spirit of Duty. The second project is even more extraordinary, I think, in the 21st century. It is a building of no commercial gain at all. It's entirely a building of redundant beauty. which serves as a beacon to the campus and to the wider city. It has a bell purposely commissioned, which is of the scale of Big Ben, which rings out a note of D across the city of Dallas, a reminder, a polite reminder perhaps, of a timeless way of building a tall structure. As with the other buildings, Indiana limestone has been used throughout with handmade old Carolina bricks. You can see a huge amount of detail invested in the interior, which has a lower chamber out of which projects the pedestal for Alexander Stoddard's central deity, the figure of Fortuna. Here we have a realization of that interior, and the final building at dusk with the figure of Fortuna. Just to give you an idea of scale, that figure is about 20 feet tall. Detailing of the exterior, showing again inventive detailing that relates to the great classical tradition in America. The principal facade, which will have two seated figures in bronze by Alexander Stoddard, one of Aristotle and one of Adam Smith, which are in progress at the moment. In the lower chamber, there's a room for meetings, some of the detailing involving American bison heads, and on the right, the longhorn sheep or bighorn sheep found in Texas. Alexander Stoddard's great Fortuna figure in his studio in the Modello form. And the interior with the figure realized in marble and the niches, 4 niches on the interior containing figures of endeavor, the various endeavors that have supported the great American tradition. Alexander Stoddard with his figures in his studio prior to them being cut in stone, and the figures realized within the architecture. Finally, the East Campus. This is an entire city block, which is a short distance walk away from the West Campus, which is in construction at the moment. Once again, brick and stone predominating, copper and slate on the roofs that will endure, and an abundance of cultural references to the great American tradition, which in turn drew its inspiration from antiquity and from the classical world from the West. And we are now learning from the great golden age of the 20th century classicism in America. And the final slide of the exterior shows the references to some of the sort of art moderne or art deco references that one finds in American high-rise structures. A great portico to each of the 3 buildings is linked by a colonnade responding to the climate. These buildings and the whole campus is really a green oasis in an alien, otherwise alien modern city. The final slide of the interior of the East Campus, which will be again a place of culture, making references to across the classical world, from the modern classical world through to antiquity. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. And I would like to, Ms. Hogg, would you do the honors?
So this is an award that we are providing to you for your wonderful work from Tag 23.
Well,
And
thank you.
we're actually working on getting these done on parchments. When we're done, you'll get them. It'll be sometime before 2073.
Well, thank you very much. It's very, very much appreciated, and we're very grateful.
Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. Our next award winner is FFKR, Roger Jackson, who is going to tell us about his experience on the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania temple, maybe show us some more of their work. Roger?
Yes, thank you. This is the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania temple for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We were involved with this project with partner architect Perkins and Will out of their Atlanta office.
Excuse me, if you have a presentation of your own, you can just start it and share screen when you're ready.
So here's this beautiful building in the city. This is the rendering that we did to secure approvals from church leadership. That it is really a magnificent building in the city. It was completed and dedicated for worship in 2016. This client has a specific effort to build buildings that are beautiful, noble, and enduring. High quality materials, elegant design, and just the very best that they can do as a token of worship to God. They prefer traditional styles, though there are many of the temple buildings that are a little more contemporary. A lot of the buildings that were contemporary in the time in the 70s are having some significant problems, and they're being reworked today. We did a very careful sort of precedent study in the city. Our partner architects is from Philadelphia, and we counseled with him a lot. And we spent a lot of time in the city wandering this town and photographing buildings and studying them and touching them. We did as careful as we could, proportional study of things, how tall things are. And a lot of this whole building started with my hand and a couple of pencils, then switched to SketchUp, where we did a lot of work. And then it was then converted into a Revit model at a LOD 400 for the construction documents. Building there was a lot of effort and very beautiful, intentional detailing of putting the pieces together. And our draftsman was so careful in making sure the dentals turned the corner, the modillions turned the corner. Everything fit perfectly in it. And then with our effort and detailing and the tremendous craftsmanship that we had, this building is just magnificent in the city. It's difficult to photo because of its placement in the city, and there's a big freeway right in front of it that's sunken. So a lot of my photos are up close. This is my most famous photo, standing next to that giant Corinthian pilaster capital. That thing weighed about 5,800 pounds. Stone is a Deer Isle granite from Maine, and the installer was Lepore and Sons locally from Philadelphia, and the carver and fabricators were in Quebec, Canada. Building is really magnificent in the city. I can tell you the interior is as magnificent as the outside. This is where it sits in the city. This was an in construction photo. You can see that there. This is 60-story neighbors across the way. It's a large building, but it's dwarfed in this big, magnificent city. To the far left is the Free Library. Next building over was the Family Courts building. I think it's been converted to condominiums. And then there's our building, and we deliberately tried to keep it in character with those. This beautiful cathedral with this brownstone is also with the Corinthian order. And we did our best to make this thing beautiful and to fit within the city. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And we want to celebrate you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being there. Paul Duras Architecture, Mark Wilson Jones, please.
Right. Can everyone hear me?
Yes. Click on
Excellent.
your presentation and go for it.
So, hello, everyone. This is, as you see from the poster, a rather extraordinary kind of one-off building that we call its nickname the Roman Villa. And in this presentation, what I want to do is sort of guide you through the principles that led to it. And I'm also trying to focus on certain ideas, even academic ideas, because after all, I'm a researcher as well, that talk to the principle of endurance. So I'm starting with an image of the Parthenon because it's a kind of icon of endurance. And the other thing to say about it that's important, that it was, as we all know, temples were houses to the gods, but it was also a gift to the gods. And this is an important notion. People like Ruskin have written about this in terms of Gothic architecture, but you have this idea of the gift unlocks care, dedication, investment and binds it to it. And that is one of the secrets of endurance, quite apart from quality of construction, which of course is also amazing. And then even things like refinements, which were illustrated here on the right, participated in this. In a sense, all the effort and skill that goes into producing these things is part of that gift giving, part of the gift to the gods and to civilization. So hence its endurance. Other things that are important that come down from antiquity are principles of design. And we have this idea, unfortunately, let's say people who don't understand sufficiently traditional and classical architecture, that it's a question of copying and rules of proportion and so on. But of course, it's a very flexible, dynamic interaction between principles and variety on the one hand, and buildings like this that talk to each other obviously are indulging in a kind of centuries of replication and variation that is never actually doing the same thing. And that's part of this vitality that leads to endurance. And my own work as a scholar has been to try and work out some of these particular relationships and mathematical proportions that are part of this kind of approach. So always principles and variety, and that's the key of what I've been writing about. And then turning to the project that is the subject of our poster and my little talk, essentially these principles are put into action in the most sort of let's say abstract way possible. So we start with just a fuzzy recall of a kind of type we want to achieve. We have the geometry and the proportions that come hopefully from the gut in the first instance, and only later would we turn to particular examples for comparing and honing our skills and seeing actually how certain niceties might be resolved. So similarly, when it comes to the plan, the plan has there is a kind of Palladian quality about the whole building, or what we call the main house, which is the second phase. But this is not the result of, say, taking a Palladian villa, a specific one, and then varying it. We just work in the way that I believe ancient Roman architects and also Renaissance architects worked, is you start with axioms, axes, symmetries, and so on. You build them up with your compositional notions, and the plan develops. And as it does so, when you have tricky problems, then you consult the masters, the San Micheles, the Peruzzis, the Raphaels, and so on. See, well, how did they do that? So that's just really how we sort of go about our business, so to speak. And this is the result summed up in that poster, which Jacob has beautifully prepared here, and he's also the job architect. So I just want to put that personal thanks in there to Jacob. Anyway, in the top there, you see photographs of the first phase, which is complete. And in the bottom sequence of photographs, that's the next phase to come, if you like, the main building, the main house, the main meal. And that's just a glimpse of it, but I want to move on very quickly to actually look a little bit more slowly, obviously not too slowly, at the completed phase 2. So here is it's a trabeated structure generally, portico with columns and beams, but we've particularly enjoyed the challenge of fitting in a vault within this structure. Had to be very shallow, and also the whole question of how you decorate it. And so we were lucky enough to be assigned the task of producing the wall paintings, not actually painting them, but doing the designs for the ceilings, the wall paintings, quite a large program. So that was a wonderful opportunity because we had to immerse ourselves in the wonders of Roman painting, which can be found either in Rome or around the Bay of Naples, and then try and do our own loose interpretation. And I found that sort of my decades of doodling, more or less inconsequentially, actually came to have some kind of productive use. And this is just a glimpse here to show us enjoying the play between faux marble and real marble. And there's a kind of spot the difference thing sometimes. And that's another bit of fun. And then just to end up returning to this theme of endurance, I think another thing that's important with Roman practice is the idea of spirit of place, or genius loci. And so obviously there's the classical principles and classical ideals that are in a sense universal and could be applied anywhere. But of course, part of the art is to apply them in a way that suits the particular place, the particular climate, and all of that. So we've done our best to say adapt the principles to the genius loci, and we hope, if it's not hubristic, that this kind of building with its quality and its composition and settling into the landscape will become part of the environment and will endure, essentially because it uplifts people visiting and it's enjoyed, and that ultimately is what we're aiming for. And then here at the end, I've just got 3 quick slides to show a sort of another Roman theme, but nearer to home in the sense that the previous project was in the Caribbean. Here we are in England, in the historic city of Bath, which is famous both for its Roman antecedents and above all, the Georgian set pieces, the wonderful Georgian architecture of Bath. But right in the center of this city is a temporary rugby stadium, which is a little bit of an eyesore, but it's okay. But the problem is that there is the wish to actually monumentalize this and make a permanent stadium. And you can see here what kind of beast it is. And in particular, draw your attention to the very uncomfortable lack of junction or lack of accommodation between the stadium to the left and the leisure center to the right. So this very awkward condition that helps no one. So at our sort of discomfiture, let's say, at this situation, we've proposed this obviously visionary, completely different project. We have no clients. It's completely pro bono work. And we see it as pro bono in the sense that it should hopefully benefit the community, maybe by knocking heads together and leading people to see that actually, well, maybe this could really be done. Incredibly unlikely, but that's the idea. And then if you have your spirit of place right and your materials, local materials, beautiful materials, and a proper traditional classical design, hopefully that would endure if they ever build it, which of course is purely speculative. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much.
Okay, let's head on to the next, please. There has been a desire to try and give take another whack at the Sydney is Beautiful. I'm not sure if it's going to work, but let's try to see it.
Thank you kindly for this. Very, very honored.
Thank you very much. Beautiful work.
Thank you.
Ms. Kent, are you trying to push it through? Don't hear you. You're on mute.
I'll stop sharing if you don't mind on yours.
Please do. Let's see if this will work.
Let me know if there's no audio.
This whole exercise is about inspiring people for how we might be able to do something a little bit differently, and it's not everyone's cup of tea, and that's perfectly okay. We're not forcing it on anyone. We just want a seat at the table. I believe that in the words of Chesterton, on pissed off optimists, when you do love a thing, its gladness is a reason for loving it, and its sadness is a reason for loving it more. So, enough protesting and whinging and letters to the editor and, I don't know, councillors bashing down their doors. We need to go out and do and counter-propose and create and show them what we want, because otherwise nobody else is going to do it. And to our jury, Mike Day and Elizabeth Farrelly here tonight, and Richard Economakis and Nia Buras, who are based in the States. And a very special thank you to every architect and urbanist who entered the competition. Your commitment to beauty and the sheer amount of effort that you've put into this competition is absolutely incredible, and we wouldn't be here tonight without you. So I hope you get some business out of this. Make sure you write down the names of all the people who are on exhibit. Thank you.
To Millie, because it's important I acknowledge Millie's incredible work, because you don't get to acknowledge yourself. Thank you on behalf of all of us for your courage, for your vision, and for the way in which you've inspired a whole bunch of particularly young people around this idea that our cities can and should be beautiful, and that as citizens it is our birthright, it is our expectation, and we should demand that, and we should demand it of not just design professionals, but for capital, for investors to deliver that, but they won't deliver it, of course, unless we ask them to. In the late 1990s, Sydney was selected by the producers or directors of the Matrix films as a wonderful, stereotypical city skyline. It was selected especially because American audiences wouldn't know where the hell it was. It could be anywhere. That the central business district of Sydney was suitably bland or suitably similar that it could speak for a metropolis that could be anywhere on the planet. That was seen as something that was great for a film set, but it's terrible for a sense of civilization. We should have cities that speak of our aspirations as a community. That should be a fair expectation of all those who work together to build our cities. It reminded me of that terrible indictment that Gertrude Stein, the American author, said when she was asked about her hometown, and she described it as, well, there is no there. Or Howard James Kunstler, when his evocatively titled book about sprawl in America in the 80s called The Geography of Nowhere. These places that speak of nothing and nowhere in particular. It was traditional architects, actually, who actually led the campaign to fight back. And Leon Cryer, the Luxembourgish architect, who said the public will accept any city plan and skyline provided that its architecture is traditional. Now, my provocation to this crowd tonight is, yes, traditional, particularly in the old world, in which Leon Cryer was referencing. It's a little bit more complex and challenging and interesting in a new world setting where we are still in the process of determining what our traditions are and what our traditional vernacular actually looks like. We do have incredible echoes of what it can be. Close to my workplace, the New South Wales Parliament itself is an imported Georgian design with balconies or verandas imported from India to form something that is now identified as uniquely Australian. We do have echoes of what an Australian vernacular looks like. Our challenge is to develop that more and more. So we need to develop not just the traditional, but the truthful. Buildings that speak of our environment, of our culture, of our aspirations, of our materiality.
It has been a real pleasure working with my co-judges, Mike Day and Nia Buras and Richard Economakis, who have brought to the discussions that we've had a sort of wisdom and scholarship, but also, I have to say, a kindness and a humour that's made it a real pleasure, don't you think? Certainly has. Yep.
What I'd like to do is just firstly to announce the second prize in the professional category, and it's the Winston Grand Prix Australia for Woolloomooloo Towers. The jury was impressed with this entry and unanimously thought it was warm, subtle and deferential to Sydney's vernacular. As a whole, the building's composition and its recesses, shadows and sense of texture contribute well to a strong sense of place with admirable scale and character at street level. The jury gave Woolloomooloo Tower was second prize despite the absence of an urban plan, which obviously was called for, but in recognition of the sophistication of the scale and the character of your submission. So perhaps more than any other entry, this composition respects and renews the existing urban character of inner Sydney, making it a potential and realistic catalyst for future urban transformation. So congratulations. So finally, the first prize has been awarded to MJ Suddy Architects Australia for Woolloomooloo Reimagined.
Okay.
So if I could just give you an insight to the jury's determination on this prize. The jury awarded first prize to this inspired and comprehensive scheme with its clear vision for Sydney, beautifully presented. The proposal takes a clear position on defining urban space to establish an appealing street presence. Importantly, it sends a strong message about urban planning in Sydney. We must resume our efforts to build blocks and define streets again, as Elizabeth argued, if our urbanism is to enrich public space. This approach to creating timeless urban places that are highly walkable conforms well to the brief. The jury respected the narrative behind the vision and the manner in which it pays homage to local heroes Juanita Nielsen and Jack Mundy, valiant defenders of local heritage and history.
Thank you.
Such a proposal
Thank
to
you,
develop this area
Cecilia. This has been really wonderful. I think we can move on. Thank you.
Yes, we'd like to thank our international judges, especially you, Dr. Buras, and all the architects here today. Your work is why Street Level is able to do what they do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was all too kind of you all. We had a great time. Thankfully, Economakis was there and the local judges, so that I was kept in line. Before we continue, Mr. Voreshk is now going to start keeping time. Our original idea was 6-minute presentations, and we are to stay on that. We are going to give you a warning 1 minute from the end of your presentation. So please wrap it up.
In the Zoom chat, right? So
no, you're going to say it loud.
Oh, okay. All right. Perfect.
You say 1 minute at the right time, so that we can move forward and get everybody in here. Thank you very, very much. The next up are Colin and Catherine Mulhern from Luxembourg for their mixed-use building. Please, Colin, take it away.
Hello, sorry, hope everyone can hear me all right?
We hear you, and as soon as you're ready with your thing,
that's great.
Share.
Well, so after the previous projects, I think we're going to move down a scale. I don't have that scale of client or of budget. I'm just trying to get my...
Okay, let me tell you, while you get this together, let me tell you about the building itself. This is a mixed-use residential commercial in Luxembourg. It uses a typology present in the streets of Pre-Haussmann and Paris, where often a mezzanine floor with semicircular windows overlook the large windows of the shops on the ground floor. The building retains all the modern comforts and the contemporary systems. Press on share screen when you're ready, giving the impression of a succession of arches along the street. It's designed to be an integral part of the streetscape. Michael Diamant commented that this building is a perfect future generic building that could be replicated everywhere in Europe.
Sorry, do you all see my slide okay? Yes.
You haven't started share. You have to on the Zoom thing, the green button.
Yeah. All right. So that was a previous project. Yes, here we are. The previous slide, please. Well, this is the presentation that we sent in for the tag 23, and it's when the client came to us, approached us for this project, he said that it will be a fairly banal program without much architectural interest, but every project we do, no matter what size or what type of building or what place, it's always an opportunity to do something right, to do something good. We used a typology that honestly I'd been waiting for about 30 years to use. Typology, waiting for the right project. Typology which is present in the streets of Pre-Haussmann and Paris. A mezzanine floor with a semicircular window, a above larger windows of shops and restaurants on the ground floor. This gives an impression of succession of arches along the street. So if you could just go back 2 slides and leave it there for a while.
I think we really need to move forward because we're trying to keep a schedule. I'm really sorry. These are really, really beautiful. So
yeah, well, it's very important to us to that every detail be drawn. If you draw 90% of the details, you'll only get 70% if you want of what you want. Although when you draw 100%, you might get 90% of what you like. Every element in the building had to be drawn very in great detail. And as you can see, from the plans, the outside appearance of the facade is an expression of the interior layout of the plan. Sorry, I won't look at the screen because it's putting me off. The outer walls are built using insulating blocks with a mineral render. There's no applied insulations or anything in the building. There's traditional roof structure with natural slates. The decorative elements on the facade are made of stone, windows painted wood. We had to use material that would allow us to build in a traditional manner with but also respecting the insulation and different various regulations that are imposed on us at this present time. So the ground floor is commercial, and above we have the client asked for a maximum of flats, so we have 5 flats above. The building is all of the modern comforts, contemporary systems, required energy class, and it actually costs less than most of the modern boxes that you usually see everywhere. Because the real economy comes from the fact that the load-bearing structure comes from the roof right down to the foundations, comes down in a straight line. So you've got a logical layout from one floor to the next. If we want to build towns and streets as beautiful as the streets of Paris, there's no mystery in it. We must use the same architecture for everything that we build today. Here in this slide, you can see the street facade in the middle. On the left, you see what it looks like in the layout of the street. So unfortunately, as we same problem as with other classical architects, that all of the neighbours are horrendous modernist designs. On the right, Leon Creer very kindly made a little, as a joke, made a little photo montage showing that if there was a line of buildings like this, what it would look like. I think it would, the street would look probably better on the right than on the left. Anyway,
right, 1 minute warning. I'm sorry, Mr. Mulhern.
Well, you're all right. I don't think I need another minute because
thank you so much. Really, thank you. And I'd like to just a second go to, and we will stay on track. Thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very touched. Thank you very much.
The next one up is going to be Adam Architecture. We're actually going to read their submittal. They're not here. This is Hugh Petter. This is the new Levine building at Trinity College. It's designed to sit comfortably within the college's rich built and landscape heritage. The ambition was to achieve a high quality, characterful building that built on the heritage while being a modern building and supporting the college's ambition to improve diversity of applicants. Ms. Hogg, can you step in, please?
Sure. The building is beautifully detailed in its use of natural materials, durable in its construction, environmentally sustainable, and designed such that it can be reconfigured internally over time. So congratulations.
And congratulations to Adam Architecture and Hugh Petter. Oops, it says Peter. It will be corrected. Thank you. They also submitted the portico and public realm at the Oval Cricket Ground in London. Mr. Voresh, would you care to read this one?
Sure. Owned by the Duchy of Cornwall and home to the Surrey Cricket Club, the new grand main entrance in the front of the historic pavilion includes a 4-story high brick and stone portico. The internal space has been remodeled and refurbished to improve the terrace and restaurant areas. The Hobbs Gate has been restored and relocated on axis with a new portico. The restoration is part of a long-term development plan.
And thank you to Adam Architecture, among the leaders of the new traditional architecture. Thank you very much. Next up is John Simpson Architects. Are you ready to tell us about the wonderful Eton College?
Let's make sure I don't have anything. Yes, press. Ah, that's right. Okay.
Bravo.
Yeah, you can hear me now, right?
Very well, thank you.
Right. Well, this is Eton College. The original historic center of the college is really by the chapel that you see there with the pinnacles at the top, which was built by King Henry VI. All the buildings you see there are really, or most of the buildings you see there are really Eton College. And it operates from those buildings, and all the buildings basically follow the urban pattern of the town. Our contribution to Eton is really the area shown red at the top of that picture, along Keats Lane at the southern entrance to the town. What you've got here is the pink buildings, which are the new buildings, which continue the line of Keats Lane and create a courtyard behind. These are the sort of spaces which are either called quads at Oxford, courts in Cambridge, and at Eton they're called yards, hence the name Macrum Yard, in case you were wondering. This is Keats Lane. Most of the buildings flanking Keats Lane are in brick, either red or stock brick. The buildings are wider than you would normally expect along in Eton itself, each with their own entrances which lead into the various schools. Our building includes 3 new schools: a School of Theology and Philosophy in pink, a School of Modern Languages in blue, and a School of Economics and Politics in green. And the purple building includes a museum for Eton College and a new debating chamber come lecture theatre. This is a painting by Carl Lorben showing the street, part of a larger capriccio. The buildings on the right are the existing buildings, and as you go to the left, these are the new buildings culminating in this little tower and the building for the debating chamber. All the buildings are basically built out of load-bearing brickwork and load-bearing masonry, all using natural materials. The yellow stock brick building you see higher up the street basically is the entrance leading into Macrum Yard, as you can see there. And as you go in, you go through the Great Arch, past the gates, straight to the arcade of the Modern Languages building, which you see here. The building is basically a reference to another building at Eton, which is the upper school, you see here in the original old school yard. This was the building where debates were normally held before.
Professor Simpson, you have 1 minute left.
And it uses ionic columns. It uses columns which replaces the Doric columns with a much more exotic order, which relates to the School of Modern Languages, which comes from Miletus in Asia Minor, as you can see here. As you enter into Macrum Yard, you see the great big rusticated brick mass of the debating chamber, which is embellished with this fountain. The fountain isn't only there for decoration, it also uses a process of evaporative cooling to cool the interior of the debating chamber. The building is built with a copper roof and here you see a very large copper acroterion sitting on top of a Doric triglyph below, designed in the form of a tripod. There's also an entrance that you come in through from the school itself, which leads from the School of Classics through to the new museum, and you pass underneath this little triumphal archway, which also links together at the upper levels the two ranges, and has this order from the throne of Apollo at Amyclae near Sparta, which combines both the Doric and Ionic orders in this manner. This is the entrance to the museum, and that's embellished with the order from the Temple of Isis at Pompeii, and also together with these sphinx on the top, gives you a foretaste of what to expect inside when you enter the Museum of Ancient Antiquities that they have.
Professor Simpson, I'm sorry, but your time is up. I don't want to.
Let's let Professor Simpson keep going until I think he's almost done, right?
It's almost done, yes.
Thank you.
Sorry for interrupting.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Yeah, the ancient Egyptian antiquities collection is probably one of the best in private hands. There are two entrances to the museum, one from the prime yard itself and one from the street, as the building is open to the public. And you enter via this little sort of amphitheater space with a central altar, which gives you some sort of feel for what you're about to expect inside when you enter the debating chamber, with its ceiling embellished with Anthemian and palmette patterns painted in the ancient manner, which you can see here. It's based on the and is inspired by the council chamber at ancient Corini, which is, amongst its many distinctions, is that it was the only building built by the Greeks, as far as we know, with incorporating an arch. And here you see the chamber in use, with the provost, the headmaster, accompanied by the king in the front row. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. That was fabulous. We'd like to recognize you for your great work. I
Thank you
look
so
forward
much.
to your next session.
Thank you so very much, Nia.
This
It's
is
much
really,
appreciated.
really amazing. Next up is Tom Stroik from Duncan Stroik's office, and he's going to talk about Christ Chapel and Hillsdale College and the architecture of the temple. Tom, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me all right now?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Today I will discuss the architecture of the temple, looking at Christ Chapel, which we designed at Hillsdale College in Michigan. The chapel is the presence of God on campus. This is actually a quote of our patron, a very bold statement, yet one in which he believes is true. We would argue that the architecture of a temple should embody this presence of God, and there are key principles to distinguish the temple. Two that I'll talk about today are durability and verticality. Duncan Stroik positioned the chapel axially with the historic Central Hall, which was the grandest existing building. This new chapel location proves its centrality to the life of the college. And its implied towers to either side rise above the adjacent, very horizontal campus buildings. The chapel has a pedimented facade with Indiana limestone columns and cornices. This Indiana limestone is our version of your Portland stone. The exterior columns are a Palladian denticulated Doric, no triglyphs. You can see also that we generate our construction documents by hand. The proportion of the facade apertures and arches are always taller than a square. Limestone peak of this facade is at 74 feet or 23 meters above the piazza. The visible roofs that you see are of Vermont slate and copper. For durability, we specify thick and multi-wythe brick at the front of the building, especially. 4 wythes of brick at these Ionic pilasters. You can see on the side of the towers, the stepping back of the brick with multiple withes down below and thick brick for durability. The front portico tholos is topped by this first structural brick dome built in America in the last 50 years, 32 feet in diameter. 8 columns encircle the portico, and the brick ribs that are self-supporting stretch upward to the center. Tall mahogany doors with concave limestone pediments invite us in. Over each door is symbolic colored marble rondelle, arabiscato for fides, a cremo tirreno for spes, and breccia di satsema for caritas, faith, hope, and charity. The interior nave is a 64-foot ceiling height with arcuated window bays. One doesn't look straight outside, but rather out and upward. The narthex transition draws us in, also in the Doric order, but these capitals and bases are inspired by the Colosseum. Light pours in from above, which we see throughout medieval and Renaissance temples. The side galleries strengthen the perspective toward the altar, toward the chancel, but also the nave is punctuated with these limestone columns, which happen to support the live load of the side gallery seating and the roof structure above. There's audience seating for 1,300 people. The galleries have vaulted ceilings that draw us upward. The interior columns and pilasters are Doric with a fully expressed entablature inspired by Palladio's drawings and his buildings, such as the Basilica in Vicenza. These interior column drums, just the drums, because they're divided in 3, are 9,000 pounds each, for a total weight of 17 tons.
You have about 30 seconds left.
At the peak of each cross vault are the fruits of the Holy Spirit. The chancel is commodious for liturgies and for the occasional symphony. The high altar is Bianco Venetino Carrara with rose onyx panels. The coffered barrel vault rises above us, and at the walls, relief panels with the evangelists and with trumpet cymbals and a swag, because this space doubles for musical performance. The orgue du coeur is a carved African mahogany organ case designed by Stroik. This accompanies regular evensong in this chancel space. And the larger grand orgue in the loft has fluted mahogany columns and a Surliana motif with the inscription Laudate eum in cordis et organo, praise him with strings and pipes, Psalm 150. Finally, the chapel's central axis and high above us, a Surliana window with a carved limestone surround. Christ Chapel stands in the center of campus as the presence of God, and the architecture of this temple attempts to exemplify these principles, durability and verticality. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Thank you. Beautiful work. I really enjoyed hearing about the materials and so on. Thank you very much. We're moving on to our next presenter, which is Studio Urbano. The Studio Urbano is consists of Pedro Godoy and Maria Sanchez in Guatemala City and Cayala. I think all of you are familiar with the Cayala project already. The new town of Cayala is an extension of Guatemala City. It has deep ravines surrounding it, and we're going to hear a longer presentation on this by Leon Creer. He's going to replace Maria Sanchez because she has been taken ill. We all wish her very good health, and she can use all of our good wishes. That presentation is going to be, I believe, tomorrow in the conversation about fabric in motion. And we are going to recognize Maria and Pedro for their really great work. All the work that we have seen here so far is by definition the kind of stuff that is going to look good in 50 years. without too much maintenance. So I think that we are ready to start our conversation here with Robert. We will be fielding questions. Mr. Buras and Pablo Funes, if you're here, and Ms. Hogg, have there been questions that showed up so far?
Yes. So there's one question regarding Professor Simpson's presentation of Eton College. Does load-bearing stonemasonry or brick actually need special permission in the UK? It's like that in Germany, currently discussed at the Schinkelbauakademie reconstruction discussion, if you might have heard of it. So, Professor Simpson, could you pitch into that for that?
Well, you need special permission to build something more permanent. Is that right?
No, if you need a special permission for stonemasonry to be load-bearing in the UK.
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
No, not at all. I was just incredulous that in Germany you can't build.
Well, yeah, it doesn't surprise me anyways. Okay, so Bart, I hope this answers your question. Next up.
Catherine Johnson has a question for Colum. Catherine, do you want to? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Colum, what a wonderful project you showed us.
Thanks very much.
You said it's less expensive to build with masonry because the load travels in a straight line from the roof to the ground.
Yes, yes.
Hang on. Did you happen to do a side-by-side comparison in your particular case? I'm just curious.
No, it's just that often I get into discussions with clients, other architects about budgets, and I realize that the budgets that my modernist peers use are often the estimates they make are often much higher than my own. So there's often what adds cost to building are when you have beams, when you have loads that don't come straight down but have to be carried off to the side. It's using structural concrete or steel or whatever. Cantilevers, just about every modernist project that goes up that I see around Luxembourg have cantilevers in it. This is all very expensive. Then, of course, free form with flat roofs. And I just see that when I'm dealing with engineers, one engineer said to me, said, where Usoli Shikan, where are the deviations? I said, there are none. He said, well, your building's very boring to an engineer. But I put it down to the fact that I use load-bearing brick and block construction, load-bearing external facades and insulating block. I just know that my budgets work out cheaper than very often cheaper than most of my colleagues, modernist colleagues.
And one last question. The windows can be simple. They're just popped into the opening instead of the, all the scaffolding and then the hanging and the gaskets and the.
Oh yeah. Well, again, it's the way I plan a building is if you have a traditional approach, you think of things like maintenance, for example. All my windows and all my buildings are openable. So that to clean it, you open the window, you clean it, and you close it again. I laugh when I see all of these mountaineers climbing about modernist buildings to clean them all. So we build up the masonry, and then comes from the inside, push the windows against the external facade. There's a little recess, the opening inside is slightly bigger than the opening outside. Just push the windows in, fix them, and that's it. They go on to the next floor. No, the scaffolding just has to go up for when you put the render on the facade, and there's another scaffolding goes up to put the roof on. But you don't need any special means of installing windows outside or especially of cleaning them during the life of the building.
Fabulous.
You're going to hear more of Colum's wisdom on materials and systems in the session on deep green. That's also tomorrow. Thank you very much, Catherine, for the great question, and thank you, Colum, for the wonderful answer. I see here a question to Thomas and Duncan. Stroik, elaborate on the workmanship behind the brick. 2 minutes on that.
On the thickness of the brick?
Yep.
Great, wonderful. We worked
to clarify, my question was about the brick dome at the entrance portico. Very impressive, and I was unaware that it was the first to be executed in 50 years. That's very impressive in the US, I believe. So I just want to hear what you discovered in the process of getting that done through the completion.
Wonderful. Well, we worked with our structural engineer. The contractor did use formwork to construct the dome. He didn't have to, but researching with John Oxendorf, a structural engineer at MIT, we studied the Guastavino history. We came up with a way to calculate the thrust of the brick. There is a tension ring at the perimeter atop the limestone columns, but it is a 32-foot span. It's self-supporting in a sense and has a mortar parge across the top of the dome. It's something that in our research, we've seen more common in South America today and other places. For some reason, we stopped doing them in America after Guastavino, but we'd like to bring it back. And with the help of our engineers and a talented brick mason, we were able to do it.
Thank you very much.
There's one follow-up question to the Christ Chapel project. If the bell tower on the cross section is still to be constructed, it's by Herman, the question. So I think this also goes out to Thomas.
Thank you. Yeah, we built into the bell towers the ability for future functioning bells, raising the height of either of the twin towers another 20, 25 feet, so that the copper domes that have been built to date can be hoisted up should the client want to complete the 2 towers. It's ready to go.
All right, thank you. These are all the questions until now.
Thank you very much. I would like to move along and take the final minutes of the session to celebrate Robert Adam. He's not going to be able to be with us on Sunday when we're celebrating the founders of the new traditional movement. And he is definitely one of the pillars of where we are at these days. And I would like to hear from Robert. I think we all would. A little bit about the past, a little bit about the present, and a little bit about the future. Robert?
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good. Well, first of all, I really enjoyed the presentations we've just seen. Just the variety and the quality of what we were looking at was fantastic. In fact, I'm incredibly jealous of some of these commissions. But there you go. You can't have everything. So my past was, I'll try and be brief because I have a long past, because I'm old. I mean, how I got to the position I'm in, I suppose, I got a Rome scholarship, and having nearly failed at college, as I got a boost when I got a Rome scholarship. I came back in 1973, and I was kind of lucky and unlucky in that respect, because 1973 was the major recession of the oil crisis, and I was unemployed, and it was awful, really. So there was no job, no buildings. I did start to write, though, and I think this is important. I started to write for the Architecture Review of a building design, really about architectural theory. I think the other fortunate thing is that was the moment, really the mid-70s, when the orthodoxy of modernism started to be challenged. I mean, it was the beginning of postmodernism, I suppose. So there was something going on, which I could actually become a part of. I mean, the thing about postmodernism is because of a bad name. But traditional architects, I mean, people like Thomas Gordon Smith, for example, started off as a postmodernist and then realized that actually classicism was the thing. And so really the traditional architecture movement to some extent grew out of that, although there are other people who've been going for much longer, like Quindon Terry. And then I became a partner in a firm in 1978, and I started to get buildings. But I have to say, the buildings were very modest. I mean, this was a provincial practice. You just got what you could. Personally, I think the fact they were what are called market housing and so on was actually quite important, because it gave me a particular perspective when doing something like master planning, just ordinary buildings for ordinary people. The other thing, because of postmodernism, the interest was I was able to engage with the architectural profession, which I've continued to do. I found I became honorary secretary of the Royal Institute of British Architects at one stage. And that's persisted, and I'll get to that later. Another important thing was more writing and more studying, which I continue to do and always continue to do. The day you stop learning is the day you die. And wrote two of the papers I wrote at that time. One was a thing called The Radiance of the Past, which was the whole issue of revival and how we got revivals of revivals and revivals of revivals of revivals. But the other important one was Tin Gods, which was about technology. I worked on the basis that lots of architects talked about technology, but most of them didn't know anything about it. So my objective was to find out more about it than they did. And then I wrote about it and came up with the concept of the skeuomorph. I won't go into that now, there's not time, but you can always read it. And then the first book I published in 1990. As anyone who's written a book knows, that means I was researching it for at least 2 or 3 years before that. And that was the Classical Architecture Complete Handbook, which really was all the things I wish I'd had available at my fingertips when I started to do it. And then I joined a practice in 1978, gradually built up that practice, particularly with Nigel Anderson, Hugh Petter, and now George Samrit Smith, Robbie Carr, Rob Cox, and Darren Price. I've now left that practice, so it's one of the largest. It's the largest traditional practice in Europe and possibly more, and it's going strong. And so I'm very, very pleased. Although I'm now practicing on my own, I'm delighted that it's carried on and is carried on being successful. Neil asked me to list my achievements. This is a problem if you're British, because it's you're supposed to be modest, but I'll just put it aside and stop being modest for a moment. On the buildings, I mean, I'm so jealous of some of these projects I've seen. I mean, in fairness, some of the larger major building projects for some reason passed me by, heaven knows why. But I got some decent buildings out of it. And I also think that some of these buildings actually cut some new ground. The office building in Piccadilly and some of the country houses, quite a lot of country houses. But also I continued with simple market housing. I still do it. I still do simple houses for ordinary people, but designed for developers. Frustrating business, but probably very important. There's more of those than anything else. The other thing in urban design, I engaged in urban design, courtesy of originally of the then Prince of Wales. And I call it contextual urban design. Contextual urban design has become quite significant now. And I pioneered objective coding on that, more of that later. I also was one of the founders of INTBAU, the International Network for Traditional Building Architecture and Urbanism, which has now been going for 21 years. And I founded the other tag, the Traditional Architecture Group in the UK. When I was able to do that when I was honorary secretary of the RIBA. There were certain privileges you get with that, so I was able to establish it. I never became its chair. I left other people to do that, and Mark Wilson-Jones is currently the chair, so for which I'm very grateful. I also established a classical architecture school at Engelsweg for 4 years with the help of Christopher Liberatis and Jenny Bevan, who I think I see their name here somewhere. That's now been taken over in Cambridge. And so there's another architecture school running with that charity. I've also started up with David Lewis, who I also saw on the list of people, a short Oxford University course. And I'm also teaching in the Netherlands and in Belgium. I see Nadia's on the line as well. So teaching is very important. Everything about the future is about teaching. Effectively, my achievements, I hope, is advancing theory. Two of the other books I wrote was The Globalization of Modern Architecture. I also continue a large number of papers. And my latest book, which I all want you to rush out and buy immediately, if you haven't read it already, is Time for Architecture, because that actually analyzes the phenomenon of modernity and analyzes what tradition is, which is after all what we're doing, which is very important. So go out and buy it and read it and let me know what you think. And today, right now, I'm working for the English government. It's the English government in this case, not as a contrary to the UK government, working on reforming the planning system in the UK, one of a number of people following on from the Building Better, Building Beautiful Commission, which Roger Scruton originally chaired. So I'm very proud to be doing that, and that will have a real impact, we hope, on a very turgid English planning system, and will make places more beautiful, we hope, and more beautiful according to what the community thinks, because it's community that's important. So, time is short. The future, well, I don't know what the future is. If I did, I'd be a very rich person. I wouldn't be sitting here. However, one or two things we do know about the future is sustainability will continue as a major objective. There's no question about that. Traditional architecture is in a very good place, as we all know, because of the issue. We all know that the issue of permanence is one of the most important issues of sustainability, for which unfortunately there is no established measure. People like to measure things. And also, as several people have pointed out, things endure because people like them, and people treasure them. And again, that's an intangible, but we all know it's the case. At the same time, traditional architecture has to adapt. I mean, in the UK, for example, regulations are beginning to make sash windows, sliding sash windows, extremely expensive and difficult to produce. Well, that's not necessarily a problem. It's only sort of Anglo-Saxon countries that use them anyway. So, we have to continue to adapt. But we also believe we're right, of course, and we want everyone to take our side. And we know, broadly speaking, that the public do, but we also know, broadly speaking, that a lot of the profession don't. And so how if people think we're right, we want more of it. The trouble with the architectural profession is it's huge built-in inertia. It's like turning a supertanker. So in my view, what we should be doing in the future is engaging much more with the general profession. As a contrary is rubbishing it. It is in a state of change at the moment. The sustainability issue is accepted by everybody. There's nobody that doesn't accept that. Well, maybe not nobody, practically nobody. And so we need to engage because we need to persuade. There's no point in just attacking. And, these are not bad people. They're just misguided people. And if misguided people can always be guided. And we also have to remember that tradition is not history. Tradition is not static. It moves on and develops. And very interesting to see a lot of what we've seen today is moving on and developing tradition. And so you can read more about that in my book, In Time for Architecture. So that's my final plug. And so I'm so very, very grateful to Nia and everybody involved with this for these fantastic occasions. I mean, a masterpiece of organization, I have to say. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for laying the groundwork. We're going to take a 2-minute break for CEU and certificate registration. A poll is going to be run by our producer. Anybody who wants a certificate of attendance or CEUs, if they are AIA, however you guys do it, I don't know. Here's the poll. Fill it in. Thank you very much for doing that.